The Amos and Andy Show, transcribed, written by Joe Connolly and Bob Mosier, and starring radio's all-time favorites, Freeman Gosden and Charles Correll. Amos and Andy!
On March 19, 1928, Amos and Andy aired its first episode on WMAQ in Chicago, beginning its historic run as the longest-running radio program in broadcast history. Longevity was not Amos and Andy's lone accomplishment, however. During its heyday in the early 30s, the show would draw 40 million listeners 6 nights a week, which at the time represented a third of the country's population. This comedy program was the I Love Lucy of radio as far as impact and popularity, yet history seems to have largely forgotten it. The reason for this, and the reason for the show's lengthy run finally coming to an end in 1960, is that the show depicted stereotypical African-American characters voiced by white actors performing in blackface makeup. While immensely popular in the 30s and 40s among both whites and blacks, changing sentiments on race in post-World War II America led to controversy and protests. Freeman Gosden and Charles Correll, who created Amos and Andy and voiced the central characters for the radio show's entire run, had a background in minstrelsy before they began working in radio. They created a show for WGN in Chicago called Sam and Henry, which was a direct predecessor to Amos and Andy. Sam and Henry was popular during its 2 years on the air, but Gosden and Correll quit the show after the station rejected their idea for syndication. After they left WGN, Gosden and Correll immediately got hired by WMAQ to create Amos and Andy, and allowed it to become the first radio program to be distributed by syndication. The idea for the new show was virtually the same as the original, but they landed on the new names Amos and Andy after hearing 2 elderly black men greet each other by those names in an elevator. The show immediately took off with audiences and became the highest-rated comedy in the history of radio.
What is the difference between a Democrat and a Republican?
Well, one of them is a mule and the other one is an elephant. That's the way I get it.
I don't know if I was going to be a Democrat or a Republican, you know it?
Well, what was your ancestors?
My aunt didn't have no sisters.
No, not your aunt's sisters, your ancestors. I mean, how did your old man vote?
Oh, my papa, you mean?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, Papa used to always vote for the Democrats.
Well, then if I was in your place, I would vote for the Republicans.
How come?
'Cause I ain't never knowed your old man to do nothing right in his life.
This type of humor, heard in this clip from the original radio series where Amos and Andy discussed the 1928 presidential election, is the type of classic Amos and Andy wordplay that audiences couldn't get enough of. By 1943, the show underwent a format change from a nightly serial with 15-minute episodes to a weekly half-hour sitcom with an expanded cast and a live studio audience. Amos and Andy had a comparatively brief foray into television, lasting less than 2 years on the air before protests by the NAACP and withdrawing advertisers led to the show's cancellation. While the television show was much less popular, it holds the historical significance of having the first all-black cast. In fact, that was so ahead of its time that primetime network television didn't see another all-black cast for nearly 20 years. The legacy of Amos and Andy is a confusing one. The show was not simply popular because of white racists enjoying black stereotypes. Other shows with similar concepts existed at the time, but were all dwarfed in popularity by Amos and Andy. The characters were flawed, but they were three-dimensional and relatable across races. The theme of migrating to urban areas from rural ones that the show began under was something that many Americans were going through at the time as well. Today, though, Amos and Andy has been blocked out of the minds of a nation that is ashamed of its past. For many people, both black and white, the show represents an era of cruel inequality that most of society has strived to rectify and move on from. For fans that see the comedic merit in Amos and Andy and can set it apart from the social stigmas attached, the DVD box set of the television series is available for purchase. Clips from the sitcom era of the radio program can be found online as well. The 4,091 episodes of the original nightly serial, however, have mostly been lost in the sands of time.